Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Mike Papantonio on the line with us, the attorney and host of Ring of Fire Radio, ringofireradio.com. Hey, Pap, how you doing today?
Thom, how you doing?
Just great. Detroit. When I was 2 years old, I lived in Detroit. When I was 22 years old, maybe 21, I lived in Detroit for about a year. When Louise was pregnant with our first, I guess I was 22. I needed health insurance, so I got a job as an engineer with RCA in Detroit, and lived in and I grew up in Michigan. I know that city inside out, and it is just tragic to see what's going on there. And I understand you've been mulling this over, ruminating on it at some length.
Well, it's kind of like this last story that you did on TPP, where the Clinton White House, the Bush White House, and just about everybody in D.C. has given us NAFTA, CAFTA, and SHAFTA, and now TPP is in the works. And now now we see what that does. When you ship all the manufacturing jobs out of the country, you have urban areas that are heavily manufacturing areas that end up going bankrupt. It's not just happening in Detroit, I can assure you. And so all of a sudden, this is good news for the Republicans or the conservatives. It's not just Republicans anymore. I hate to even just put it in that one in that one label, but the conservatives who want to privatize everything, this is a great opportunity, because what they've done is they've swept up these pensions. This is the first step: take people's pensions that have worked so hard their entire career for the municipal government there, and then the second thing you do is you say, listen, you're not able to give an adequate accounting for things like sewage, water, police, you name it. If it's a public service, they say you just can't do it as a municipality or as a government, therefore we need to privatize it. And so all those things are coming into play in Detroit. Chapter 9 has been a great avenue for the real neocons where it comes to trying to divide, to create the argument that, gee whiz, labor has done this to Detroit because we had to pay those high pensions, and they ignore the fact that it doesn't have anything to do with that. It has to do with the fact that they've had corporate giveaways, the tax base is disappearing, they've subsidized corporations, given big tax breaks to the point to where they don't have any money left. And so Detroit is simply just it's kind of the it's the parrot in the mine that's telling us that something's wrong.
Yeah, canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I think so too. And it's telling us about our trade policies. It's telling us about our about the wonders of Republican libertarianism that says we don't need public services like good schools. And at another level, it's also telling us about how institutional racism works, because as Detroit got more and more African-American, 85%, it's the most African-American city in America, that institutional discrimination that's kicking in. You know, that old Harvard study, well, not old, it was done in 2004, where they submitted to corporations all over America who were advertising for employees with very specific requirements. You know, we're looking for somebody with a master's degree, 2 years experience, doing such and such, blah, 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 blah. And they created identical resumes for an identical person, two identical people, slight differences, so the company didn't catch it, and one had a name like Letitia and the other had a name like Alice,
right.
And they submitted them to these companies, and then they found that the Letitias got about 40% fewer callbacks.
Yeah.
And so, surprise, surprise, when you have institutional racism, it creates poverty. When you have poverty, it creates problems.
Well, this is imposed poverty. Our politicians have known that you can't continue shipping jobs out of the country, and especially in heavily manufacturing areas. 80%, Tom, of the America's population live in heavily urban areas.
Yeah.
So this is not something that's just going to be unique to Detroit. We're going to start seeing this more and more. The subpart to this story I just think is interesting. It's almost like an effort to balkanize part of the United States. You now have a serious discussion. I mean, you have some billionaires up in Detroit that want to take Belle Isle. Belle Isle is a development there in Detroit. You're familiar with it.
It's a beautiful island out in the Detroit River that used to have a theme park or a park in it with a Ferris wheel and all kinds of cool stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so what they want to do is they want to privatize Belle Isle. They want to pay $1 billion for it, these developers. And they say if we do that, we can charge people $350,000 just for the right to live there. We can have our own money system. we can have our own laws written, but it's going to be an exclusive gated community. But it's not that it really isn't that this might really happen. It is that the discussion is seriously on the table. And if you really think about it, that's where this whole neocon thing has tried to push us. That is, shrink government down to the size that's small enough to drown in a bathtub. You do that. One way to do that, obviously, is to bankrupt the government. And so that's been part of this process. Unfortunately, I'd love to say that Washington has done something about it. They have whistled past the graveyard on this when time and time again people have told them, you've got to save our cities because the interconnection of an entire economy in the United States is dependent on a thriving city. And Detroit is it's bad news for a lot of reasons. And you have Snyder up there he can't wait to push through a Chapter 9. And you have a judge.
Chapter 9 bankruptcy.
Yes, Chapter 9 bankruptcy. And you have a Judge Gerald Rosen up there who's probably inclined to go along with it in one form or fashion if you look at his history as a federal judge.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of important things, but I can't. The worst thing that I have this vision of a Monaco sitting there, this city-state, independent city-state on Belle Isle. It's kind of how I visualize what's happening throughout this country.
That river is the border between the United States and Canada. And so that island, if my recollection is correct, I believe that's the waterway that connects Lake Erie and Lake Huron. And so if my geographical recollection is correct, I've never been to Belle Isle, but like I said, I lived in Detroit for a year and I know the area. And if that's the case, then maybe they'll occupy it and then try to declare independence.
Yeah.
Create their own.
Well,
Ayn Randville.
The story to me is the discussion is seriously on the table.
Yeah.
Part of the discussion, of course, we hear coming from the right is this: Detroit is just happened because of greedy unions that bankrupt the cities because they demanded too much in pensions. Heavy taxation has run business out of Detroit, which is not so far from the truth. Regulators and regulations have stifled business. Teachers, firemen, and police are paid too much money. It's all those right-wing talking points that they've all come to bear there. And the real truth is we know why it's happened, because when you ship jobs out of the country, you have places like Detroit where people can't work because there is no work because we've shipped the jobs to Saipan.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, if you look at the internal logic of what they're saying people have pensions, right? They have and they have, which would mean that they have money to spend. If they have money to spend, they're spending money in that community, which creates jobs, which creates a tax base. People, greedy union people are demanding decent wages. Well, if they were, actually back when they were, that getting those decent wages would mean that they're paying decent taxes, and the city wouldn't be in trouble.
Well, it's another analysis of the idea if capitalism requires that you put money at the bottom, not at the top, because at the top it doesn't trickle down. From the bottom it does trickle up. Right. And we've lost sight of that just at every turn because all the money is now being held at the top. But this isn't unique. I mean, you can go Kentucky. I just saw a story. Kentucky, they raided the public pension programs. At the same time, they financed I think a $1.8 billion tax subsidies for wealthy businesses. And then at the end they said, gee whiz, the pension program's at risk. We may have to declare bankruptcy. Yeah.
Well, and part of that goes back to Reagan's changing the rules so that pensions didn't have to be listed on the books of companies and cities as liabilities, but instead could be listed as assets.
Right.
So they inflated the values of companies when they got sold, and then the buyers would just deplete that asset, which is mind-boggling when you think about it.
It's a new way of business. Now it's struck cities, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Papantonio, Ring of Fire Radio. Check it out, ringofireradio.com. Pap, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Tom.